Toker's Bowl?
Toker's Bowl, 19 BC. Be there.
That's right, folks. You can be a lucky cannabis judge. To be a guest at the first annual Toker's Bowl, grab a copy of Cannabis Culture now.
Get your Cannabis Culture magazine now.
Hi there, it's Marc Emery here. You know me, Cannabis Culture magazine, President BC Marijuana Party, yeah, this sort of stuff. Hey, I've been doing a lot of TV shows lately. I was on Kitchener-Waterloo cable show last night, and I'm going to get to that because that's important. But just so you know, I'm on MTV, a special they have on marijuana coming up in the next weeks. Tech TV, which is a digital cable station channel in the United States, has a show all about me, a half-hour show about what I do, and you'll find all that interesting. And although you will be my familiar audience, you will already be on the inside about such things. And I was in Crimes of Compassion, I'm on the news, anyway, lots of stuff. But anyway, the key thing is when I'm on a lot of shows that are call-in shows, people call in, and I'll talk about all the reasons why marijuana is illegal, like why it's the bigotry that surrounds why marijuana is legal. A lot of people call in and they kind of quote the Jack Herrera conspiracy theory that DuPont wanted to bring in a synthetic nylon and hemp was threatening him and stuff like that. And I have to stop you all right there. That is just a minor footnote. Marijuana is not illegal because the DuPonts conspired to push it off the market. There's just not a lot of evidence to show that that was really a thing that was really important and vital to the petrochemical industry. Hemp was just not going to make a big comeback. You know, hemp actually is really only properly available if you have slave labor, literally black slave labor in the Americas before the Civil War was how hemp was profitably harvested. And in small wage countries like China and Hungary where the wage rate is really low, that's the only way you can afford to actually grow hemp and process it because it's labor intensive and it's in order to keep it for the working people, which is what hemp is aimed at, you have to have low paying labor and that's what's in. So anyway, the DuPont conspiracy theory, big business pushing out hemp is a very minor reason. Because the reason marijuana was made illegal in the southern United States and eventually to the northern United States, you've got to follow this migration of why marijuana was made illegal. First in Texas and New Mexico, El Paso, Southern California, and then spread to the rest of the urbanized parts of the United States and eventually to Canada. For example, in Canada, marijuana was made illegal before anyone had ever smoked it. There's no known record, there's no memoir, there's no nothing of anybody ever smoking, ingesting cannabis for medical or recreational or any kind of relationship at all. There's no written document of that in Canada before its prohibition in the 20s. The reason marijuana is illegal, and really it's the only reason that it's illegal in my opinion, are threefold. First of all, marijuana attracts a very musical orientation. Marijuana makes you musical. You'll notice that where marijuana comes from, hot equatorial countries, those are all very musical cultures. And music leads to a lot of things like dancing and rituals, and unfortunately for a lot of puritanical Americans, it leads to fucking. And that's really why marijuana is illegal. Because in the 1910s and 20s, when it was moving into the United States, it was carried throughout North America by black musicians. Black jazz musicians, okay? In the 1920s, they started smoking reefer, and that's where you get the one note, the off notes in jazz, all the different unusual beats. Or Mesmero in Really the Blues talks about how every jazz musician smoked pot. Most great musicians have. There's very few musicians alive that do any kind of creative work that's worthwhile that don't smoke pot. But in the 1920s, think of it like this. You've got a totally white society. Blacks are largely in southern cities, inner cities, in very ghettoized areas. Blacks were all living in one area. So basically, if you didn't need to, a white person wouldn't necessarily see a black person ever. And that's just the way they liked it. And to a large degree, it's still like that. And the thing is, pot makes you want to dance. And what happened in the 1920s, for the first time ever, white women are going and dancing, young white women, presumptively virginal white women, are going to jazz clubs, blues clubs, and they're seeing these black guys in their slick suits, and they're going crazy about them. And in fact, then the black guys introduce these young white women, young virginal white women, to pot. All the black musicians had it with them. They get the girls, they smoke them up. These girls end up fucking these black guys. Some of them get pregnant. And there's no way in the 1920s and 30s you're going to be able to tell your parents that I'm pregnant with a black man's baby, because they'd never stalk you again. So you'd have to say you were drugged and raped. And that's commonly what was happening. That's why that shows up in the Hearst papers about sex fiends high on marijuana after going to speakeasies and jazz clubs and stuff like that, because basically a white woman would have to say she was drugged and raped if she was ever going to get accepted back in her family again. And this was actually an occurrence that happened through most cities in North America. And there's nothing, I guarantee you there's nothing that threatens a white mother and father of a daughter in this day and age or any other in America than the thought of some big black mandingo cock going inside their young lily white virgin white daughter. That is like an abomination of the highest order. That is all you need to make marijuana illegal. If black guys are going to be looking for our white women, is what they're thinking, with those big cocks. And hey, if you don't believe me, how did you feel about that scene in Traffic where the girl is fucking her dealer who's a black guy, and she's lying there and he's just shot heroin into her and then he's fucked her, and you see him walk into the door with his big ass cheeks wobbling away. You can just imagine that huge schlong that's just been in that white woman, and you're going, oh my God! Ah! Exactly. That's all you need. And then there's another component. On top of the pot leads to inevitably to music, because pot's always been dominant for thousands of years in very musical cultures, It's not like, Western culture, white people's culture, has only got two musical forms. That's Western classical music and minstrel music, which is like kind of modern day folk music. But everything else is a black cultural form. Soul music, rock and roll music, jazz music, blues music, gospel music, everything else is black music. And it comes from people who aren't wearing a lot of clothes, whose body parts are all out there, like from Cuba or Africa or equatorial hot places. Not North American places where we're all bundled up and you can't see anything. Right? It's not a very sexual culture, Western Europe, Northern Western Europe, because we're always bundled up. We're trying to stay warm half the time, right? That's not the case in equatorial cultures that go back thousands of years. Sex, much more second nature common, and so was music. Everybody was carrying, because people were nomadic. When it's cold, you got to stay in a house all the time and stay away. When you're out in the hot, open sun, you're a nomadic culture, and you're moving around with a musical instrument, and you're having lots of parties and fun, and it's a whole different world that white people generally don't want. And the other component is, I was going to tell you, is that all pot smokers question authority. They're all critics. They're all dissenters. We are not conformists. You don't find conformist pot smokers. All right? And there's nothing more threatening, along with black mandingo cocks trying to get our white women. That's the worst, of course, so pot's got to be made illegal for that. But it also, every generation of pot smokers has always been anti-government. We are against the establishment. You go back to the black jazz musicians, well, they're obviously against the established order. The beatniks from the 50s, the young people, anti-war demonstrators of the 60s. Every generation of pot smokers from high schools. High school students love pot. It opens their eyes to question the stupidity and the cold, heartless, steel, concrete school system, where it's a cold, unloving environment. Of course, kids are totally told to conform. Go into the job mill, become one of the drones that go out, and the kids smoke pot and they realize it's all bullshit. And of course, parents hate that. There's nothing they like worse than having their teenager be uppity with them, and now he's smoking pot and getting really uppity. And he's getting uppity to his teachers and to cops. And that's the way it is. If you're a pot smoker, you're anti-establishment, you're against the system, you question authority. Nobody likes that in the elitists. The parents don't like it, teachers don't like it, the government doesn't like it. So that combined with the fact we love to fuck, and we love to play instruments and music, and we don't recognize any of the traditional authorities of religion and state, is why marijuana is illegal, and it remains the only reason why it's illegal today. So there you have it. See you next week. Hi there, I'm Marc Emery of Marc Emery Direct Seeds, of course, and in this room we have the first Sensimilla edition in North America of the Aussie Bushman, which won first place in the 2000 Nimbin Cup. And these are spectacular. If you look at these frosty resinous colas popping up all around me, really large flowering growth for just 3.5 weeks into flowering. Imagine how they're going to look at 8 weeks. They're going to be stunning. And these seeds are available from Irish Rose Seed Company at only $45 for 10 seeds. And that's spectacular for a cup winner out of Australia. It won second place in North America at our smoking test last year. And I think you're going to find this one of the most adorable sativas.